The champagne cork popped with a celebratory echo through our marble-floored dining room, the sound so jarring against my news that I nearly dropped the medical folder clutched in my trembling hands. My husband Noah raised his glass toward the kitchen doorway, not even bothering to hide his smile as he spoke into his phone. "Yes, darling, I'm opening it now. The crystal, just like you suggested." His voice carried that intimate tone I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's too wrapped up in her little health drama." Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Little health drama. The words hit harder than the diagnosis itself. I stood frozen in the hallway, medical papers documenting my supposed death sentence weighing heavy in my hands, watching my husband of 6 years celebrate what he clearly believed was his impending freedom. 6 months, maybe less, according to her dramatic announcement. Noah continued, swirling the golden liquid in his flute. "We'll need to be patient, but think about it, by next summer, we'll be in Santorini just like we planned. No messy divorce. No splitting assets. Everything will be mine, ours." I retreated silently to my study, my private sanctuary in our Seattle waterfront home. The room Noah never entered, dismissing it as my little hobby space where I managed what he called my charity projects. If only he knew those charity projects had evolved into something far more significant than his entire real estate portfolio. The irony wasn't lost on me. 15 years ago, I'd been Dr. Amira Blackthorne, a brilliant emergency physician with multiple research publications and a groundbreaking trauma protocol that had caught the attention of major medical institutions. But love, or what I'd mistaken for love, had made me foolish. Noah had been charming, sophisticated, everything a dedicated doctor thought she wanted. He'd convinced me to step back, to let him handle the business side while I focused on being the perfect wife. What he didn't know was that I'd never truly stepped back. Through careful planning and trusted connections, I'd maintained my medical career while building something he could never have imagined. I pulled up the secure files on my computer, reviewing the test results from 3 different laboratories. The tumor markers were elevated, yes, but the pattern was unique. My research colleagues had seen similar patterns before, cases that defied conventional medical wisdom. But I'd kept that information from my regular physician, letting him deliver his grim prognosis based on standard protocols. My phone buzzed. Dr. Sarah Chen, my research director and one of the few who knew my true background, had sent an encrypted message. "Preliminary analysis complete. The anomaly is confirmed. We need to discuss the implications immediately." Through the door, I could hear Noah's voice growing more animated. She looked absolutely destroyed when she told me, pale, shaking, the whole performance. "Though between you and me, she's looked better with a death sentence than she has in years." Performance. If only he knew how right he was, though not in the way he thought. I closed my eyes, remembering the woman I'd been before Noah, confident, ambitious, unafraid to challenge the medical establishment. That woman had never truly disappeared. She'd simply been waiting, building her foundation in shadows while playing the role of the devoted wife. "The life insurance alone is worth $20 million, Noah was saying now. Plus the house, the investments, her family trust. We're looking at close to $100 million tax-free. Her family trust. The trust he knew nothing about, that I'd carefully shielded through prenuptial agreements he'd been too arrogant to read carefully. The trust that held assets worth far more than he imagined. I opened a new file on my computer, beginning to type. If Noah wanted to play games with my life, perhaps it was time to show him what happened when you underestimated a dying woman. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching the performance I was about to give. I descended the stairs slowly, gripping the banister, letting my silk robe hang loose around my supposedly frail frame. Noah sat at the breakfast table, his tablet propped against the crystal vase of fresh lilies, my favorite flowers, though he'd never noticed. "Darling," he said, barely glancing up from his stock portfolio. "How are you feeling? Did you manage any sleep?" "A little," I murmured, sinking carefully into my chair. Maria, our housekeeper, immediately appeared with green tea and dry toast. She'd been with us for 10 years, watching our marriage deteriorate with the silent wisdom of someone who'd seen too much to be surprised by human cruelty. "I've been thinking," Note announced, finally setting aside his tablet. "This must be such a shock for you. Perhaps you should take some time away. The house in the Hamptons is empty. The sea air might do you good." Translation: Get out of my sight so I can move my mistress in. I recognized the calculated concern in his voice, the same tone he used when maneuvering a particularly tricky business deal. That's thoughtful, I replied, stirring my tea with a trembling hand. I didn't have to fake it. Rage has its own physical manifestations, but Dr. Morrison wants to start treatment immediately. I have an appointment at the cancer center this afternoon. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Treatment, Catherine? Darling, we should be realistic about your situation. These aggressive treatments, they'll only make you suffer more. Wouldn't it be better to focus on quality of life? Quality of life. Such a clinical way of saying die quickly and quietly so I can get on with my life. I want to fight this, I said, meeting his eyes directly. I'm not ready to give up. Of course not. That's very brave of you. The pause before brave spoke volumes. I just want you to be prepared for the reality that sometimes these battles can't be won. My phone rang, saving me from having to respond to his thinly veiled death wish. Riley's name appeared on the screen. Riley, Noah said with forced brightness. She's been such a good friend through all this medical drama. I answered the call, watching Noah's face as Riley's warm voice filled the kitchen. Hey, beautiful. Ready for today's appointment? As ready as I can be. I'll pick you up at 1. We've got this, okay? After I hung up, Noah was quiet for a moment, studying his coffee cup with unusual intensity. Amira, he said finally, there's something we need to discuss. Something practical. What's that? Well, with your diagnosis and the uncertainty ahead, I think we should review our arrangements, legal arrangements, just to make sure everything is in order. What kind of arrangements? Wills? Beneficiaries? That sort of thing. I've scheduled a meeting with my attorney next week, just to make sure we're prepared for any eventuality. Any eventuality. Such a delicate way of planning for my death, of course, I said. That's very thoughtful of you to handle those details. He smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. I just want to take care of everything so you can focus on getting better. Getting better. We both knew he didn't believe that was possible. The Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center was a monument to hope, wrapped in glass and steel, its atrium filled with natural light that seemed to promise better days ahead. Riley sat beside me in the infusion chair, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her usual scrubs traded for jeans and a soft sweater that made her look younger than her 35 years, so she said, adjusting the heated blanket around my shoulders. On a scale of 1 to 10, how supportive is Prince Charming being? I focused on the 4-line being inserted into my port, grateful for the distraction. He's processing. Riley's voice carried the particular brand of skepticism she reserved for difficult patients and inadequate husbands. Amira, honey, you've been married to this man for 6 years. How exactly does someone process their wife having cancer? It's a shock. He just needs time to adjust. Riley was quiet for a moment, watching the chemotherapy drugs begin. There. Slow drip into my bloodstream. You know what I love about you, Dr. Hall? You're brilliant, compassionate, and you can diagnose a heart attack from across the air. But when it comes to that husband of yours, you have the biggest blind spot I've ever seen. What's that supposed to mean? It means that any man worth having would be here right now, holding your hand while you get chemo, not closing some real estate deal. She squeezed my fingers. It means that when someone you love gets sick, you don't disappear into your work. You show up. I wanted to defend Noah, to explain that everyone processed trauma differently, that his way of coping was to maintain normalcy through work. But the words felt hollow, even in my own mind. He's scared, I said instead. We're all scared, sweetheart. The question is what we do with that fear. The treatment lasted for hours. Riley stayed the entire time, making me laugh with stories from the air, helping me navigate the nausea that came in waves, and holding my hand when the anxiety became overwhelming. When Noah's name didn't appear on my phone once during those 4 hours, I started to understand what Riley meant. That evening, I sat in our living room, wrapped in the cashmere throw Noah had bought me for Christmas, trying to keep down the bland crackers that were all I could manage. The house felt enormous and empty, despite Noah's presence upstairs in his office. Around 8 o'clock, I heard him on the phone again, his voice carrying down the hallway. I know it's complicated, but we need to think about timing, he was saying. The situation has changed significantly, and I need to protect my interests. I assumed he was talking about work, but something in his tone made me pause. There was an intimacy to it, a careful modulation that seemed wrong for a business call. No, she's dealing with treatment. She'll be focused on that for months. It's actually perfect timing when you think about it. Perfect timing for what? I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady from the treatment, and moved closer to the stairs. Listen, I've consulted with my attorney. Given the medical situation, I have grounds for irreconcilable differences. The courts will be sympathetic to someone whose spouse can't fulfill their marital obligations. The words hit me like a physical blow. Marital obligations. As if love was a contract with performance metrics. Bethany, I need you to understand this isn't about you. It's about timing. Once the divorce is final, we can move forward with our plans. Bethany. I knew that name. Bethany Rivers, the marketing director at Noah's firm. Young, ambitious, with the kind of polished beauty that came from good genes and expensive maintenance. I sank onto the bottom stair, my hand pressed to my mouth to keep from making a sound. The nausea I'd been fighting all day was nothing compared to this sick feeling in my stomach. Of course, I still feel the same way about you, Noah continued, his voice dropping to the intimate register I remembered from our early days. But I can't be married to damaged goods. You understand that, right? This isn't the woman I married. Damaged goods? The phrase echoed in my mind like a diagnosis worse than cancer. I made it to the guest bathroom just in time to vomit up the crackers and the water, and what felt like the last of my illusions about my marriage. When I finally stopped retching, I sat on the cool tile floor and stared at my reflection in the chrome towel rack. The woman looking back at me was pale, thin, with the beginnings of dark circles under her eyes, but she wasn't damaged goods. She was a woman fighting for her life, and she deserved better than a husband who saw her illness as an opportunity for escape. The divorce papers arrived on a Wednesday, exactly 2 weeks after my second chemotherapy treatment. I was in the kitchen, forcing down a protein shake that tasted like chalk, when our doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouette of a courier. Dr. Amira Hall? The young man held a manila envelope with the kind of official weight that meant bad news. Yes, I need you to sign for this. My hands were steady as I signed the electronic pad, steadier than they'd been in weeks. I knew what was in the envelope before I opened it. Hall vs. Hall. Petition for dissolution of marriage. I read through the legal language with the same clinical detachment I used for medical charts. Irreconcilable differences. Division of assets. Spousal support with a note that my medical incapacity might affect my ability to maintain our current lifestyle. Medical incapacity. As if cancer had made me incompetent, the front door opened, and Noah's voice carried from the foyer. Amira, are you home? I folded the papers carefully and slid them back into the envelope. In the kitchen, he appeared in the doorway, and I was struck by how good he looked. His hair was perfectly styled, his skin had the healthy glow of someone who'd been getting enough sleep, and his clothes were pressed to perfection. He looked like a man who'd been relieved of a burden. How was treatment today? He asked, his tone carefully modulated. Fine. I held up the envelope. This came for me. For a moment, genuine surprise flickered across his features. Then something else, guilt, maybe, or calculation. Amira, I don't. Just don't. You have to understand. This isn't about you being sick. It's about us. We've been growing apart for months, and my cancer diagnosis was the perfect excuse to make it official. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to make him flinch. You think any of this is fair, Noah? You think it's fair that I'm fighting for my life while you're planning your exit strategy? I never wanted this to happen. Which part? The cancer or the divorce? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Both? Well, you can't control the cancer, but the divorce? That's all you. I walked past him toward the stairs, the envelope still in my hand. At the bottom step, I turned back. I'll be out by the weekend. Amira, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because I'm not going to sit in this house and watch you pretend to be the devoted husband while you plan your future with Bethany Rivers. The shock on his face was genuine. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that I know. I climbed the stairs without looking back, each step feeling like a small victory. In our bedroom, I pulled out the suitcase I'd used for our honeymoon in Italy and began packing the clothes I'd need for the next phase of my treatment. My phone buzzed with a text from Riley. How are you feeling today? Need anything? I typed back, free. The apartment Riley found for me was a furnished one-bedroom in Capitol Hill, close enough to the hospital for easy treatment access. but far enough from Magnolia to feel like a different world. It was small, modern, and blessedly free of memories. The walls were white, the furniture was simple, and the morning light that streamed through the east-facing windows felt like possibility. I'd been living there for 3 weeks when the letter arrived. It was a Tuesday, and I was between treatment cycles, which meant I had enough energy to feel almost human again. I'd spent the morning reading medical journals, trying to stay current with emergency medicine research, when I heard the distinctive thud of mail being delivered. Among the usual bills and medical correspondence was a cream-colored envelope with my name, written in elegant script. The return address read Morrison, Blackthorne and Associates, Attorneys at Law, Helena, Montana. I didn't recognize the firm name, but something about the formal weight of the envelope made me pause. Inside, I found a letter on expensive letterhead, dated just 3 days earlier. Dear Dr. Hall, I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing to inform you of a matter that requires your immediate attention regarding the estate of your late grandfather, Lawrence Blackthorne. Mr. Blackthorne passed away 6 weeks ago at his home in Helena, Montana, as per his final wishes. I am contacting you to arrange a meeting to discuss your inheritance. I understand that you may not have been in contact with Mr. Blackthorne in recent years, but I assure you that this matter is of significant importance to your future. I would be grateful if you could contact my office at your earliest convenience to schedule a meeting. Please accept my condolences for your loss. Sincerely, Robert Morrison, Senior Partner. I read the letter twice, then a third time, each reading making less sense than the last. My grandfather was dead. The grandfather I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. The man who'd cut off contact with our family when I was in college. Lawrence Blackthorne had been a figure from my childhood, more myth than man. He'd built a fortune in tech and healthcare, starting with a small medical device company in the 1970s and eventually creating a healthcare empire that spanned 3 continents. But he'd also been cold, demanding, and utterly intolerant of what he saw as weakness. My mother, his only child, had never lived up to his expectations. She'd wanted to be an artist, to paint landscapes and teach children, but he'd pushed her toward business school and corporate leadership. When she'd finally rebelled and married my father, a philosophy professor with more passion than money, Lawrence had been furious. The final break had come during my sophomore year at Stanford. I'd been accepted to medical school, which should have pleased him, but I'd also been dating someone he deemed unsuitable. During a particularly brutal family dinner, he'd made his views clear. If I wanted his support, I would end the relationship and focus solely on my studies. If I wanted to waste time on romantic nonsense, I could do it without his money. I'd chosen love over money, and Lawrence had chosen to cut us off entirely. Now, apparently, he was dead, and he'd left me something. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the letterhead. Morrison, Blackthorne and Associates. This is Dr. Amira Hall. I received a letter from Robert Morrison regarding my grandfather's estate. Of course, Dr. Hall. Mr. Morrison has been expecting your call. Let me transfer you to his office. The voice that came on the line was warm, professional, and tinged with what sounded like genuine sympathy. Dr. Hall, thank you for calling. I'm Robert Morrison. I worked with your grandfather for over 20 years. I have to admit, I'm surprised to hear from you. My grandfather and I haven't spoken in more than a decade. Yes, I'm aware of the estrangement. However, I think you'll find that your grandfather kept closer tabs on your life than you might expect. Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. What do you mean? Perhaps it would be better if we discuss this in person. Are you able to travel to Helena? I thought about my treatment schedule, my recovery time, the life I was trying to rebuild in Seattle. Can't we handle this over the phone? Dr. Hall, I think you'll want to see the estate in person, and there are documents that require your signature. He paused. I can arrange for a car to pick you up at the airport, and we can handle everything in one day, if necessary. Is this about money? Among other things, yes, but it's more complicated than that. I found myself curious, despite my exhaustion. How much more complicated? Your grandfather left you the controlling interest in Blackthorne Health Sciences. The words hit me like a physical blow. Blackthorne Health Sciences was one of the largest healthcare technology companies in the world. They developed everything from advanced diagnostic equipment to AI-driven treatment protocols. I'd used their equipment in the air countless times without ever connecting it to my estranged grandfather. I'm sorry, what? 51% of the company. along with his personal holdings and the Montana estate. The total value is approximately $2.3 billion. I sat down heavily in my small kitchen chair, staring out at the Seattle skyline. That's not possible. I assure you, it's quite possible. And quite real. But he disowned me. We haven't spoken in over a decade, Dr. Hall. Your grandfather was a complicated man. He was also a brilliant businessman who understood the value of talent and integrity. He followed your career closely. Your work in emergency medicine, your research publications, your advocacy for healthcare reform. He was very proud of your accomplishments. He had a funny way of showing it. Yes, he did. But he also believed that strength came from independence. He wanted you to succeed on your own merits, not because of his influence. I thought about the years of struggle, the student loans, the long hours in residency, the constant pressure to prove myself. So he let me suffer to make me stronger. He let you become the person he knew you could be. And now, he's giving you the tools to do what he always believed you were capable of, which is changing the world, Dr. Hall, one patient at a time. After I hung up, I sat in my small kitchen for a long time, watching the late afternoon light move across the walls. 2 weeks ago, I'd been a divorced woman with cancer, living in a borrowed apartment and fighting for her life. Now, apparently, I was a billionaire. The irony wasn't lost on me. Noah had divorced me because he thought I was damaged goods, a burden he couldn't afford to carry. He'd calculated that my illness made me less valuable as a wife, less useful as a partner. If only he knew. The flight to Helena took 2 hours, but it felt like traveling to another world. As the plane descended over the Montana landscape, I pressed my face to the window and watched the rolling hills and vast sky spread out below us. This was where my grandfather had built his empire, where he'd retreated from the world to create something lasting. Tessa Monroe sat beside me, her laptop open to a folder thick with research on Blackthorn Health Sciences. My childhood friend had become one of Seattle's most feared corporate attorneys, and I'd called her the moment I'd made the decision to go to Montana. Okay, she said, pulling up an organizational chart. Here's what we're walking into. The board consists of 12 members, including your grandfather's seat, which is now yours. 6 of them are old school loyalists who've been with the company for decades. 3 are newer additions who are brought in to modernize operations. And 3 are what I'd call wildcards investors who have their own agendas. What kind of agendas? The kind that involve selling the company to the highest bidder and walking away with massive payouts. She pointed to 3 names on the chart. These 3, Henderson, Walsh, and Kruger, they've been pushing for a sale to PharmaCorp Industries ever since your grandfather's health started declining. PharmaCorp, I recognize the name. They're the ones who've been buying up smaller biotech companies and gutting their research divisions. Exactly. They're less interested in innovation and more interested in profit margins. If they acquire Blackthorn, they'll probably shut down half the research programs and focus on manufacturing generic versions of existing treatments. The car that picked us up at the airport was a sleek black sedan driven by a woman in her 50s with silver hair and intelligent eyes. She introduced herself as Margaret Chen, Lawrence Blackthorn's former assistant and now the company's director of operations. Dr. Hall, she said, extending her hand. I'm so glad you came. Your grandfather spoke of you often in his final months. He did? I was surprised by this revelation. Oh yes, he followed your career closely. Every published paper, every award, every promotion, he knew about all of it. Margaret's smile was warm but tinged with sadness. He was incredibly proud of you, though I suspect he never told you that directly. The Blackthorn estate sat on 200 acres of pristine Montana wilderness, with the main house perched on a ridge that offered sweeping views of the valley below. It was impressive without being ostentatious, a sprawling lodge built from local stone and timber that seemed to grow naturally from the landscape. Robert Morrison was waiting for us in the main study, a room lined with leather-bound books and dominated by a massive stone fireplace. He was a tall, lean man in his 60s with the kind of quiet authority that came from years of handling other people's fortunes. Dr. Hall, he said, rising to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. I know. This can't be easy. It's complicated, I admitted. Most worthwhile things are. He gestured for us to sit. Before we get into the business matters, there's something your grandfather wanted you to have. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Lawrence's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just 3 months earlier. My dear Amira, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably confused about why a grandfather who cut you off years ago would leave you his life's work. The truth is, I never cut you off. I pulled back because I needed you to become strong without my interference. I needed you to prove to yourself and to the world that you could succeed on your own merits, and you have. You've become everything I hoped you would be and more. You've dedicated your life to healing others, to advancing medical science, to fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. You've shown grace under pressure, integrity in the face of temptation, and courage when it would have been easier to give up. I know you're facing challenges now. I know about the divorce, about the cancer, about the way people have disappointed you when you needed them most. But I also know that you're stronger than you realize, and that you have the power to turn your pain into purpose. Blackthorn Health Sciences isn't just a company, it's a mission. We exist to make healthcare better, more accessible, more effective, for everyone who needs it. I built this company because I believe that science and compassion, properly funded and intelligently directed, could change the world. Now I'm passing that mission to you. Not because you're my granddaughter, but because you're the only person I trust to carry it forward with the vision and integrity it requires. Don't let the bastards sell it to PharmaCorp. With love and respect, Lawrence. I read the letter twice, feeling tears prick at my eyes. The grandfather I remembered as cold and demanding had apparently been watching over me all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. He really kept track of my career? I asked Morrison. He had reports sent twice a year. He knew about every paper you published, every patient you saved, every stand you took for healthcare reform. Morrison's smile was gentle. He also knew about Noah. What about Noah? He never liked him, said. He was too focused on appearances and not focused enough on substance. Lawrence was particularly concerned about the prenuptial agreement Noah insisted on. I felt Tessa stiffen beside me. What prenuptial agreement? The one that limited your claim to marital assets in case of divorce. Lawrence thought it was telling that Noah was already planning his exit strategy before you'd even walked down the aisle. The irony was bitter. Noah had protected his assets from me, never imagining that I might one day have assets that dwarfed his by several orders of magnitude. Dr. Hall, Morrison continued, I need to ask you directly, are you prepared to accept this inheritance? It comes with significant responsibilities and immediate challenges. I thought about the past few months, the diagnosis, the divorce, the slow process of rebuilding my life from nothing. I thought about Noah's casual cruelty, his assessment of me as damaged goods. I thought about the woman I'd been before I met him, the ambitious medical student who'd wanted to change the world. What would accepting it involve? Immediate assumption of the board seat and voting rights. Management of a $2.3 billion trust that includes the company, the estate, and various other holdings. And a fight to preserve your grandfather's vision against people who see the company as nothing more than a commodity to be sold. I accept, I said. The next few hours were a blur of legal documents, signatures, and explanations of complex financial structures. Tessa worked alongside Morrison to create a fortress of legal protections around my new assets, ensuring that Noah and any other potential threats would find it impossible to claim any piece of my inheritance. We're creating multiple levels of protection, Tessa explained as we worked. The company's shares are held in an irrevocable trust that you control but don't technically own. Your personal assets are similarly protected through a series of LLCs and family trusts. Even if someone sued you personally, they couldn't touch the company. By midnight, I was officially the controlling shareholder of Blackthorn Health Sciences and the sole beneficiary of the Blackthorn Trust. I was also exhausted, overwhelmed, and oddly exhilarated. As I lay in bed in the estate's guest room, I tried to process the magnitude of what had just happened. 12 hours ago, I'd been a cancer patient going through a difficult divorce. Now I was one of the most powerful people in the global healthcare industry. My phone buzzed with a text message from Riley. How did it go? Are you officially a billionaire now? I typed back, officially, and officially terrified. Good. Fear means you understand the responsibility. The next morning brought a conference call with the Blackthorn Board of Directors, my first official act as the company's new controlling shareholder. Margaret had set up the call in Lawrence's study, with me seated at his massive desk, flanked by Morrison and Tessa. Ladies and gentlemen, Morrison began, I'd like to introduce Dr. Amira Hull, who has accepted her inheritance and will be taking her grandfather's seat on the board. The reactions were mixed. Some of the longer tenured board members offered genuine congratulations. Others were more reserved, clearly sizing up this unexpected new player in their carefully balanced power structure. Dr. James Henderson, one of the 3 board members pushing for the PharmaCorp sale, was the first to challenge me directly. Dr. Hall, while we certainly welcome you to the board, I think it's important to address the elephant in the room. You have no experience in corporate governance, no background in healthcare business operations, and no understanding of the current market pressures facing our industry. That's true, I said calmly. I also have 15 years of experience in emergency medicine, a deep understanding of healthcare delivery challenges, and a personal commitment to the mission my grandfather built this company around. With respect, Henderson continued, good intentions don't necessarily translate to good business decisions. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders to maximize returns, and PharmaCorp's offer represents a substantial premium over our current market value. Mr. Henderson, I said, consulting the notes Tessa had prepared, as of this morning, I represent 51% of those shareholders. And I can assure you that my primary concern isn't maximizing short-term returns, it's ensuring that this company continues to fulfill its mission of advancing healthcare innovation. After the call ended, Morrison turned to me with something like admiration. That was well done. You managed to assert your authority without being unnecessarily confrontational. Tessa was already working on her laptop, making notes. We need to move quickly on several fronts. We should schedule one-on-one meetings with each board member, review all existing contracts, and prepare for Noah. What do you mean? He's going to find out about this, Amira. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when he does, he's going to come at you with everything he's got. I thought about the divorce papers, about Noah's careful timing, about his casual assessment of my worth. Let him come. I'm not the same woman he married. No, Tessa agreed. You're not. But he doesn't know that yet. And when he finds out, he's going to be very, very angry. Margaret looked up from her own laptop. Dr. Hall, there's something else. You should know. Your grandfather left specific instructions about how to handle difficult situations that might arise from your inheritance. What kind of instructions? He anticipated that there might be people in your personal life who would try to take advantage of your new position. He established a security protocol and hired a firm to provide protection if needed. The reality of my new situation was starting to sink in. I wasn't just rich, I was rich enough to be dangerous, rich enough to have enemies, rich enough to need protection. That afternoon, I called Riley from the estate's garden. So, she said without preamble, how does it feel to be a billionaire? Surreal, terrifying, exhilarating. I paused, like I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be. Good, because I have news from the Seattle front. What kind of news? The kind where Noah is starting to ask questions about where you're getting money for your legal fees. My blood chilled. What do you mean? Tessa's firm isn't exactly cheap, and Noah knows you are living on disability payments. He's been asking around, trying to figure out how you can afford high-end legal representation. How do you know this? Because Bethany Rivers is friends with my cousin Jen, who works in their office. And Jen has a big mouth when she's been drinking. If Noah was already suspicious, it was only a matter of time before he started digging deeper. Riley, I need you to be my eyes and ears in Seattle. If Noah starts poking around, asking questions, making moves, I need to know about it immediately. Consider it done. But Amira, yeah, when this all comes out, and it will come out, he's going to lose his mind. You need to be prepared for that. I know. No, I don't think you do. Men like Noah, when they realize they've made a catastrophic mistake, they don't go quietly. They get dangerous. After I hung up, I sat in the garden for a long time, watching the sun set over the Montana mountains. In a few days, I would return to Seattle to continue my cancer treatment and finalize my divorce. But I wouldn't be returning as the broken woman Noah expected. I would be returning as Dr. Amira Hall, controlling shareholder of Blackthorn Health Sciences, with the resources to rebuild not just my own life, but the lives of countless others. The thought should have been purely satisfying. Instead, it was tinged with something that felt dangerously close to anticipation. Noah thought he'd discarded damaged goods. He was about to discover that what he'd actually done was set free the most powerful woman he'd ever known, and she was just getting started. 3 days later, I was back in Seattle, sitting in the familiar infusion chair at Fred Hutchinson. But everything felt different now. The chemotherapy drugs flowing into my bloodstream weren't just fighting cancer, they were preparing me for battle on multiple fronts. Riley sat beside me, her expression a mixture of amazement and fierce pride. So let me get this straight, she said, keeping her voice low. Your bastard husband divorced you because he thought you were worthless, and it turns out you're actually worth more than the GDP of small countries? That's the simplified version. Yes. I love it. I absolutely love it. She squeezed my hand. How long before he finds out? Tessa thinks we have maybe a month before news starts leaking. Corporate acquisitions this size don't stay secret forever. And what's the plan for when he does find out? I smiled, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. We make sure he understands exactly what he threw away. Riley's grin was predatory. I like this new you. She's scary. She's necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Amira, it's Noah. We need to talk. There are some things about the divorce settlement that we should discuss. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow? I showed the message to Riley, who snorted. The audacity of this man. What are you going to do? Meet him, I said. It's time to start laying the groundwork. For what? For making sure that when the truth comes out, the contrast between who he thought I was and who I actually am is as stark as possible. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The coffee shop Noah had chosen was a small, intimate place in Queen Anne, the kind of location designed for private conversations. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee, looking every inch the concerned ex-husband. Amira, he said, standing to greet me, you look better. The treatment must be going well. Some days are better than others, I said, taking the seat across from him. I'd deliberately chosen clothes that made me look frail, a loose sweater that hung on my frame, minimal makeup, my hair hidden under a soft cap. I'm glad to hear that. He settled back into his chair, his expression carefully composed. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about the settlement. I've been thinking that maybe we were too hasty, too focused on the legal aspects instead of what's best for both of us. What do you mean? Well, you're facing significant medical expenses and I know money must be tight with you not working. He leaned forward, his voice taking on the concerned tone I'd once found comforting. I want to make sure you're taken care of. I blinked slowly, as if processing his words. That's very thoughtful of you, Noah. I've talked to my lawyer about adjusting the spousal support payments, maybe increasing them, extending the timeline. I know the prenup was restrictive, but given the circumstances, your illness, the uncertainty about your future earning capacity. He reached across the table and touched my hand. I want to do the right thing here, Amira, the right thing. After months of cold calculation and barely concealed contempt, he suddenly wanted to do the right thing. Why now? I asked. What's changed? I've had time to think, time to realize that maybe I wasn't as supportive as I should have been. You're dealing with something terrible, and instead of helping, I made it worse. It was a masterful performance. The concerned ex-husband realizing the error of his ways, trying to make amends. If I hadn't overheard his phone calls, if I didn't know about Bethany, I might have been touched by his apparent change of heart. I don't know what to say, I said, letting my voice crack slightly. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll let me help. Yes, I'll think about it. He smiled, the expression warm and genuine looking. Good, that's all I can ask. As I walked back to my apartment, I called Tessa. He suspects something, I said without preamble. What makes you say that? He wants to increase my spousal support payments. Suddenly he's concerned about my financial future. Shit, that means he's been asking questions, and someone told him you have access to money he doesn't know about. How do we handle this? Very, very carefully. We need to make sure that whatever information he's getting points him in the wrong direction. What do you mean? I mean we let him think you have some money, but not that much money. Maybe a small inheritance from a distant relative, or a settlement from a malpractice case. Something that would explain your legal fees but wouldn't make him think he made a massive mistake. A red herring, exactly. We want him to stay interested enough to keep digging, but not so interested that he realizes the scope of what he's dealing with. That evening, I had dinner with Riley at a small restaurant in Capitol Hill. Over wine and pasta, I filled her in on Noah's sudden change of heart. He's fishing, she said bluntly. He's heard something, and he's trying to figure out how much you know that he doesn't know. The question is, who told him? Could be anyone. Lawyers gossip, court clerks gossip, even hospital administrators gossip. The trick is controlling what kind of gossip reaches him. Tessa thinks we should plant false information. Make him think I have some money, but not life-changing money. Riley nodded approvingly. Smart. Keep him interested, but not panicked. She paused. Though I have to ask, are you sure you want to play this game? Wouldn't it be simpler to just let the truth come out and watch him implode? I thought about the question seriously. There was definitely appeal in the idea of simply revealing my inheritance and watching Noah's world collapse in real time. But that would be a moment of satisfaction followed by years of dealing with the consequences. I want him to understand the full scope of his mistake, I said finally. I want him to realize that he didn't just divorce a sick woman, he divorced the woman who could have been his partner in building something extraordinary. I want him to know that his cruelty wasn't just morally wrong, it was the stupidest decision he's ever made. Revenge is a dish best served cold? Revenge is a dish best served with perfect information and overwhelming force. Riley raised her wine glass. To overwhelming force, to overwhelming force. The next few weeks fell into a careful rhythm. I continued my chemotherapy treatments, gradually regaining strength as my body adapted to the medications. I met with Noah twice more, each time playing the role of the grateful ex-wife, touched by his newfound concern for my welfare. Meanwhile, Tessa worked her magic behind the scenes. Through carefully placed conversations and strategic leaks, she made sure that rumors of my modest inheritance reached the right ears. Nothing too specific, nothing too large, just enough to explain my ability to afford good legal representation. Noah took the bait beautifully. His concern for my welfare intensified, and he began suggesting more frequent meetings to discuss my situation. I could practically see the calculations running behind his eyes as he tried to figure out exactly how much money I had and how much of it he could claim. The irony was delicious. Noah was working himself into a frenzy over what he imagined was a few $100,000, never suspecting that the woman sitting across from him controlled a multi-billion-dollar empire. But the most satisfying part wasn't Noah's growing obsession with my finances. It was the way I felt about myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't playing a role or trying to meet someone else's expectations. I was simply being myself, the brilliant, capable, powerful woman I'd always been underneath the layers of compromise and accommodation. The cancer was still there, still requiring treatment, still a daily reality I had to manage. But it no longer defined me. It was simply one aspect of a much larger, much more complex picture. I was Dr. Amira Hall, cancer survivor, billionaire, and soon-to-be ex-wife of the stupidest man in Seattle, and Noah had no idea what was coming. For him, the call from Margaret came on a Thursday evening, just as I was settling in with a cup of tea and the latest research on immunotherapy protocols. Dr. Hall, Margaret said, her voice tight with concern. We have a problem. What kind of problem? PharmaCorp has made a formal acquisition offer. $15 billion for the entire company. I nearly dropped my teacup. $15 billion? It's significantly above market value. The kind of offer that's designed to be impossible to refuse. When do we need to respond? The board is calling an emergency meeting for Monday. They want to put it to a vote. They can't sell without my approval. No, but they can make your life very difficult if you're the only thing standing between them and $15 billion. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. This was the first real test of my ability to protect my grandfather's legacy. Margaret, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need you to quietly gather information on every board member who's supporting this sale. Financial records, personal relationships, anything that might explain why they're so eager to cash out. Dr. Hall, are you suggesting I'm suggesting that when someone is willing to destroy a century of medical innovation for a quick payday, there's usually more to the story than simple greed? I'll get right on it. After I hung up, I called Tessa. How quickly can you get to Montana? I asked. Why? Because we're about to find out if I'm really ready to be a billionaire, or if I'm just a doctor playing dress up. Amira, what's going on? I told her about the acquisition offer, about the emergency board meeting, about the $15 billion that was threatening to destroy everything my grandfather had built. Jesus, Tessa said when I finished. That's a lot of money. That's exactly the problem. It's enough money to make people do stupid things, including you? What do you mean? I mean that $15 billion is real money, Amira. Life-changing, world-changing money. Are you sure you're ready to turn that down to preserve your grandfather's vision? It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself since Margaret's call. $15 billion could fund cancer research for decades. It could build hospitals, endow scholarships, change millions of lives, but it could also disappear into PharmaCorp's profit margins, used to buy back stock and pay executive bonuses, while the research programs that could save lives were systematically dismantled. I'm sure, I said, but I need you there to make sure I don't do anything stupid in the process. I'll catch the first flight tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat in my small apartment and thought about the path that had brought me here. 6 months ago, I'd been a woman who'd lost everything: my health, my marriage, my sense of purpose. Now I was being asked to make decisions that would affect thousands of lives and billions of dollars. The old Amira, the woman who'd accommodated and compromised and tried to make everyone happy, would have been paralyzed by the magnitude of the choice. But the new Amira, the woman who'd been forged in the fire of betrayal and illness and unexpected power, felt nothing but clarity. I wasn't going to let them sell my grandfather's company. I wasn't going to let them destroy his legacy, and I wasn't going to let Noah find out about any of this until I was ready to show him exactly what he'd thrown away. The game was about to begin in earnest. The email from Sage arrived at 3 in the morning, marked urgent with a red exclamation point that made my heart race. My 16-year-old niece had been helping me with digital security ever since I'd mentioned Noah's suspicious behavior, though I'd been careful not to reveal the full scope of what we were protecting. And Amira, the message read, "You need to see this. Call me when you're awake." Attached were screenshots that made my blood run cold. Text messages between Noah and Bethany Rivers, dating back 14 months to months before my cancer diagnosis. Hotel receipts from business trips that had nothing to do with business. Photos from restaurants I'd never been to, showing my husband gazing lovingly at a woman who wasn't his wife. I called Sage immediately, despite the early hour. "How did you get these?" I asked without preamble. "Uncle Noah really needs to update his cloud storage settings," Sage said, her voice carrying that particular smugness only teenagers could achieve. "He's been auto-syncing everything to an account that uses the same password he's had since college." Seriously, and Amira, the man has zero cyber hygiene. Sage, what you did was probably illegal. What he did was definitely immoral. Besides, I didn't hack anything. I just observed data that was inadequately protected. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. Sage had inherited the family brilliance, but unlike her grandfather Lawrence, she'd also inherited a moral compass that pointed true north. "There's more," she continued. "Bank records show regular payments to jewelry stores, florists, even a travel agent. He's been living a double life for over a year." The timeline was devastating. Noah hadn't just abandoned me when I got sick, he'd been planning his exit long before the cancer appeared. My illness had simply provided the perfect excuse to formalize what he'd already decided. "Forward everything to Tessa," I said. "But Sage, this stays between us for now. No one else can know about this. Not even Riley? Especially not Riley. When she finds out what Noah's been doing, she'll want to castrate him with a rusty scalpel. And while I appreciate the sentiment, I need him calm and unsuspecting for a little while longer." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the evidence of my husband's betrayal. The photos were particularly hard to look at. Noah's face lit up with genuine happiness as he gazed at Bethany, the same expression he'd worn when he looked at me in our early days. But what struck me most wasn't the pain of seeing him with another woman. It was the cold calculation of the timeline. Every anniversary dinner where he'd seemed distracted, every business trip that had run longer than expected, every time he'd been too tired for intimacy, it had all been a lie. My phone rang. Riley's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "You sound weird." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I'm just tired." "Bullshit. I've known you for 15 years, Amira. You get tired, you don't get that particular kind of flat affect. That means you're processing something terrible." "What happened?" I closed my eyes, weighing the risks of telling her against the need to share this burden with someone who truly cared about me. "Noah's affair," I said finally. "It's been going on for over a year." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Riley, I'm here. Her voice was deadly quiet. How do you know? Digital evidence, photos, messages, financial records, everything. That son of a bitch. The words came out like a hiss. That fucking son of a bitch. Riley, no. Don't you dare defend him. Don't you dare tell me he was scared or confused or going through a midlife crisis. He was cheating on you while you were fighting for your life. I'm not defending him. I'm furious, but I'm also strategic. What do you mean? I thought about the board meeting in Montana, about the $15 billion acquisition offer, about the careful game I was playing on multiple fronts. I mean that Noah thinks he's been clever, but he's actually been sloppy. And when the time comes to show him exactly what he's lost, I want the contrast to be as stark as possible. You're planning something. I'm planning everything. The emergency board meeting was held in the Blackthorn Building's executive conference room, a glass-walled space that offered panoramic views of the Helena Valley. I'd flown in the night before, armed with Tessa's legal expertise and Margaret's intelligence. On every board member who supported the PharmaCorp deal, the information Margaret had gathered was illuminating. Dr. Henderson had significant personal debt from a failed biotech startup. Miss Walsh was facing a messy divorce that would require liquid assets. Mr. Kruger had children in expensive private schools and an ex-wife with expensive tastes. All of them had perfectly legitimate reasons to want a quick infusion of cash from selling their stock options. None of them had illegitimate reasons, which meant I was dealing with garden variety greed rather than genuine corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, standing at the head of the conference table in a navy suit that projected authority without aggression. I understand that PharmaCorp's offer is tempting. $15 billion is a substantial sum that would make all of us very wealthy. But, Dr. Henderson prompted, his tone suggesting he already knew where this was going. But selling to PharmaCorp would be the equivalent of destroying everything my grandfather spent his life building. Their business model is acquisition and consolidation, not innovation. Within 2 years, half of our research programs would be eliminated, and within 5 years, this company would exist in name only. Dr. Hall, Miss Walsh interjected, I respect your emotional attachment to your grandfather's legacy, but we have a fiduciary duty to our shareholders. Turning down a premium offer based on sentiment isn't good business. You're absolutely right, I said, surprising everyone in the room. Sentiment isn't good business, but strategic thinking is, and PharmaCorp's offer isn't strategic, it's predatory. I activated the presentation screen behind me, displaying a carefully prepared analysis that Tessa and I had worked on until 3 in the morning. PharmaCorp has acquired 17 companies in the past 5 years, I continued. In every case, they've followed the same pattern: acquire innovative firms, strip out the research divisions, focus on manufacturing existing products at lower costs, and eliminate redundancies through massive layoffs. The room was quiet as I clicked through slides showing the trajectory of each acquired company. The average time from acquisition to complete integration is 18 months. The average reduction in R&D spending is 73%. The average reduction in workforce is 42%. Those are industry-wide trends, Mr. Kruger said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, they're not. I clicked to the next slide, showing comparative data from other major healthcare acquisitions. Companies acquired by firms focused on innovation rather than extraction show completely different patterns. R&D spending typically increases, workforce grows, and new product development accelerates. Dr. Patricia Vance, one of the modernization advocates, leaned forward. Are you suggesting we pursue a different buyer? I'm suggesting we remain independent and pursue our own growth strategy. I clicked to a final slide showing projected revenues based on our current research pipeline. We have 12 products in phase 3 trials, any one of which could generate more revenue than PharmaCorp is offering for the entire company. And if those trials fail, Dr. Henderson asked, then we'll have lost a bet on innovation rather than accepting guaranteed irrelevance. The debate continued for 2 hours, but I could see the tide slowly turning. The financial projections were compelling, but more importantly, I'd appealed to something deeper than greed: professional pride. These people had devoted their careers to advancing medical science. The idea of selling out to a company that would gut their life's work was harder to stomach when presented with cold, hard data about what that sale would actually mean. When the vote was finally called, the result was 8-4 against the sale. I'd won, but I could see from the faces around the table that this victory was temporary. PharmaCorp would be back with a higher offer, and next time, some of the people who'd voted with me today might change their minds. After the meeting, Margaret walked me to my car. That was impressive, she said. Lawrence would have been proud. It's not over. They'll regroup and try again. Yes, but you've bought yourself time, and you've established yourself as someone who can't be easily pushed around. As I drove back to the airport, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. I'd just made decisions affecting thousands of jobs and billions of dollars, and somehow, it felt natural. This was who I was supposed to be, not the accommodating wife who deferred to her husband's judgment, but the leader who made hard choices based on clear thinking and moral conviction. My phone rang as I was boarding the plane back to Seattle. Noah's name appeared on the screen. Amira, we need to talk, he said without preamble. There are some things about your situation that I think you should know. What kind of things? Not over the phone. Can you meet me tonight? It's important. I could hear the tension in his voice, the careful control that meant he was either very excited or very worried. I'm flying back from Helena, I said, letting him draw his own conclusions about why I might have been in Montana. I should be home by 8. Helena? What were you doing in Montana? Family business. The silence on the other end stretched. Just a beat too long. I'll see you at 8. As the plane lifted off, I smiled to myself. Noah was fishing again, but this time, he was about to hook something much bigger than he expected. Noah was waiting in the lobby of my apartment building. When I arrived, his usual polished appearance, slightly disheveled. His hair was mussed, his tie loosened, and there was a barely contained energy about him that set off every alarm bell in my head. Helena, he said without preamble as we rode the elevator to my floor. That's where your grandfather lived, wasn't it? Yes, and now you're handling family business there. I unlocked my apartment door and gestured for him to come in, buying time to think. Noah had clearly connected some dots, but I wasn't sure which ones. Noah, what's this about? He settled into my small living room, looking around at the sparse furnishings with an expression I couldn't quite read. I've been doing some thinking about our situation. About the divorce, about your treatment, about our future. Our future? I thought we'd settled that. Maybe we were too hasty. He leaned forward, his voice taking on the persuasive tone he used for difficult clients. Amira, I know I haven't been the most supportive husband. The cancer diagnosis shocked me, and I reacted badly. But I've had time to think, and I want to make things right. I sat across from him, careful to maintain the slightly fragile appearance I'd been cultivating. What do you mean? I mean, I want to reconcile. I want to withdraw the divorce papers and try again. The words hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. After months of cold indifference and barely concealed contempt, after calling me damaged goods and planning his future with another woman, Noah suddenly wanted to reconcile. I don't understand, I said, letting confusion color my voice. You said I wasn't the woman you married. I was wrong. I was scared and stupid, and I said things I didn't mean. He reached for my hands, his touch making my skin crawl. You're still the brilliant, beautiful woman I fell in love with. The cancer doesn't change that, but you filed for divorce. I can fix that. My lawyer says we can withdraw the petition, claim we worked things out in counseling. No one has to know how close we came to making a terrible mistake. A terrible mistake. If only he knew. Noah, I appreciate this. I really do. But I'm not sure I can just forget the past few months. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to forgive. To give us another chance. I studied his face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or love. Instead, I saw calculation and desperation poorly disguised as reconciliation. Why now? I asked. What's changed? I've realized what's important. You're important. Our marriage is important. Is that the only thing that's changed? He hesitated, and in that moment of pause, I saw the truth. He'd heard something, probably rumors about my inheritance, and he was hedging his bets. Not enough information to know the full scope of what he'd walked away from, but enough to make him nervous about his decision. Amira, I know you've been dealing with some family matters. Estate issues, maybe. If there are financial complications from your grandfather's death, we should handle them together. As a married couple, there it was. He'd connected my trips to Montana with Lawrence's death and concluded that money was involved. Probably not enough money to make him desperate, but enough to make him regret his hasty exit from our marriage. There are some estate matters, I said carefully. Nothing major, just legal paperwork that needs to be handled. How major is nothing major? I let silence stretch between us, watching as his carefully controlled expression began to crack around the edges. Noah, are you asking me to reconcile because you love me, or because you think there might be an inheritance involved? That's not fair. This is about us, about our marriage. Then why does it matter what my grandfather left me? It doesn't matter. I just want to make sure you're not dealing with complicated legal issues alone. I stood up slowly, moving to the window that overlooked the Seattle skyline. In the reflection, I could see Noah watching me with the intensity of a predator studying its prey. I need time to think about this, I said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. He stood as well, moving closer to me. But Amira, don't wait too long. Some opportunities don't come around twice. After he left, I called Tessa immediately. He knows something, I said. How much does he know? Enough to be interested, not enough to be panicked. He wants to reconcile. Tessa's laugh was sharp and humorless. Of course he does. How are you going to handle it? Carefully. I want him to think he's winning while I gather more information about what he's really after. That's dangerous, Amira. The longer you string him along, the more invested he becomes in the outcome. When the truth finally comes out, I want him to understand the full magnitude of his mistake. I want him to know that he didn't just lose a wife, he lost a partner in something extraordinary. Revenge is one thing, but playing with a desperate man is another. Noah's not just going to be embarrassed when this is over, he's going to be ruined. Men like that don't always go quietly. I thought about the security protocols Margaret had mentioned, about the protection my grandfather had arranged. Maybe those precautions weren't as paranoid as they'd seemed. Over the next few weeks, I played the role of the confused cancer patient, uncertain about her marriage and overwhelmed by family legal matters. I met with Noah 3 more times, each meeting carefully choreographed to give him just enough information to keep him interested while maintaining plausible deniability about the true scope of my inheritance. Meanwhile, Sage continued her digital surveillance, providing me with real-time intelligence about Noah's communications with Bethany and his increasingly frantic research into Lawrence Blackthorne's estate. He's hired a private investigator, Sage informed me during one of our encrypted calls. Some guy named Marcus Webb who specializes in asset discovery. What has Webb found? Not much yet. Grandfather was careful about keeping his personal information private, but Uncle Noah is spending a lot of money on this investigation, which suggests he thinks there's something significant to find. How much money? $20,000 so far, according to his credit card statements. I whistled softly. Noah was betting a significant sum on the possibility that I was hiding assets. Either he'd heard something specific, or he was more desperate than I'd realized. Sage, I need you to do something for me, but it's going to require you to be very careful. What kind of careful? The kind where we make sure Mr. Webb finds exactly what we want him to find, and nothing more. It took 2 weeks to execute the plan. Working with Tessa and a computer security expert she recommended, we created a carefully constructed trail of digital breadcrumbs that would lead Webb to the conclusion we wanted him to reach. The story we crafted was simple and believable. Dr. Amira Hall had inherited a modest trust from her estranged grandfather, worth approximately $800,000 after taxes and legal fees. Not enough money to change someone's life dramatically, but enough to explain her ability to afford good legal representation and maintain her independence during the divorce proceedings. Webb took the bait perfectly. Within days, Sage reported that Noah had received a detailed report outlining my inheritance and recommending immediate action to claim his share of the marital assets. The next evening, Noah called with barely contained excitement. Amira, we really need to talk. There are some legal issues with the divorce that my attorney thinks we should address immediately. What kind of issues? The kind that are better discussed in person. Can you meet me tomorrow night? Somewhere private where we can talk freely. I agreed to meet him at a small restaurant in Fremont, far enough from my usual haunts to ensure privacy, but public enough to feel safe. As I prepared for what I suspected would be our final meeting as a married couple, I felt a mixture of anticipation and something that might have been sadness. Not sadness for the marriage itself that had been dead long before the divorce papers arrived, but sadness for the naive woman who'd believed in love and partnership and the possibility of growing old with someone who truly knew her. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone harder and smarter and infinitely more dangerous. Tomorrow night, Noah would get his first glimpse of who she really was. The call came at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday, from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, the voice on the other end was young, female, and barely controlled. Dr. Hall, this is Bethany Rivers. I think we need to talk. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. This was a development I hadn't anticipated. Miss Rivers, what can I do for you? It's about Noah, and you, and the games you're playing. I'm not sure I understand. Don't. Her voice was sharp with frustration. Don't pretend you don't know what's going on. Noah has been obsessed with you for weeks. He's spending money we don't have on private investigators, talking about reconciliation, questioning every decision he's made since the divorce. I could hear the desperation underneath the anger. Bethany Rivers, the other woman who'd thought she'd won, was discovering that stolen love came with unexpected complications. Miss Rivers, I think you should discuss this with Noah. I did discuss it with Noah. He told me about your inheritance, about how he thinks he made a mistake leaving you. He's talking about withdrawing the divorce papers. And how do you feel about that? How do I feel? Her laugh was bitter. I feel like I've wasted 2 years of my life on a man who apparently can't let go of his sick wife. The casual cruelty of the phrase sick wife hit me like a slap. This was how they talked about me when I wasn't around. Not as a person facing a serious illness, but as an inconvenient obstacle to their happiness. Miss Rivers, why are you calling me? Because I want you to stop playing with him. Either take him back or let him go, but stop stringing him along while you figure out what you want. I'm not stringing anyone along. Bullshit. You've been meeting with him, giving him just enough hope to keep him interested but not enough clarity to make a decision. It's manipulative and cruel. The irony was breathtaking. The woman who'd been sleeping with my husband while I fought cancer was accusing me of being manipulative and cruel. Miss Rivers, I appreciate your concern, but my relationship with Noah is between Noah and me. Not when it affects my life, it isn't. Her voice was rising now, desperation bleeding through the anger. I've been patient, I've been understanding, but I'm not going to sit around while he obsesses over a woman who divorced him. Actually, he divorced me because you were going to die. The words hung in the air between us like an accusation. In Bethany's mind, my cancer diagnosis wasn't a tragedy I was facing, it was an inconvenience that had complicated her relationship. Miss Rivers, I said, my voice deadly calm. I think this conversation is over. Wait, the desperation was fully audible now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Look, I know this is complicated, but I need you to understand something. Noah loves me. Whatever he's feeling about you right now, it's guilt and confusion, not love. If you really care about him, you'll let him go. And if I don't, then you'll be responsible for destroying 3 lives instead of just your own. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about Bethany Rivers and the position she'd put herself in. She'd helped destroy my marriage, and now she was discovering that stolen happiness wasn't as secure as she'd hoped, but more than that. Her call had revealed something important. Noah's obsession with my supposed inheritance was creating cracks in his relationship with Bethany. The woman who'd thought she'd won was starting to realize that victory came with a price. I called Sage. Immediately. I need you to set up a recording system, I said, without preamble. For what? For when Bethany Rivers calls again. Because she's going to call again. And when she does, I want to make sure we capture every word. And Amira, are you sure that's legal? In Washington state, I only need one party consent to record a conversation. Since I'll be one of the parties, we're covered. What are you planning? I'm planning to give Bethany Rivers exactly what she's asking for. Sage was quiet for a moment. That sounds ominous. It should. The second call came 3 days later, this time from Bethany's office number. When I answered, her voice was calmer but no less urgent. Dr. Hall, I want to apologize for my tone the other day. I was frustrated, and I said things I shouldn't have said. I appreciate that, Miss Rivers. I was hoping we could meet in person to discuss the situation like adults. What situation would that be? The situation where my boyfriend is spending $20,000 trying to figure out how much money his ex-wife inherited, while telling me he's not sure he made the right decision in divorcing you. $20,000. Sage's intelligence had been accurate. Miss Rivers, I think you're overestimating my influence over Noah's decisions. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're enjoying watching him suffer. Noah is suffering? You know he is. He barely sleeps. He can't focus at work. And he's constantly checking his phone to see if you've called. This isn't the behavior of a man who's moved on. I could hear the pain in her voice, and despite everything, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Bethany Rivers was learning the hard lesson that men who cheat with you will also cheat on you, if not with another woman then with the memory of the woman they left behind. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to meet with me. One conversation, woman to woman. Give me the chance to explain what Noah means to me, and let me hear what you really want from him. And if I refuse, then I'll assume you're playing games. And I'll start playing games of my own. What kind of games? The kind where I make sure everyone knows about your little inheritance and your sudden interest in reconciliation. The kind where I ask difficult questions about the timing of your windfall and your decision to string along your ex-husband. It was a threat, but a clumsy one. Bethany clearly thought she had more leverage than she actually did. Miss Rivers, you're welcome to tell anyone anything you'd like about my personal finances. But you should know that threatening someone is never a good negotiating strategy. I'm not threatening you. I'm asking you to be honest. About what? About whether you love Noah or whether you're just enjoying the power you have over him. The question caught me off guard, not because it was difficult to answer, but because it revealed something I hadn't fully acknowledged to myself. Did I love Noah? The man who'd called me damaged goods and planned his future with another woman while I fought for my life? No, I didn't love him. I wasn't even sure I'd ever truly loved him, or if what I'd felt had been love for an illusion he'd carefully crafted. But did I enjoy the power I had over him? The ability to make him question every decision, to keep him off balance while I controlled the flow of information? Yes, I absolutely did. Miss Rivers, I said finally, I'll meet with you tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. There's a coffee shop called Vita on Capitol Hill. Do you know it? I'll find it. Good. And Miss Rivers, bring your recording device. I have a feeling you'll want to remember this conversation. After I hung up, I called Tessa. Tomorrow night, I'm going to end this charade, I told her, by telling Bethany the truth, by telling her enough of the truth to destroy her relationship with Noah permanently. Amira, that's dangerous. If she what? Tells Noah that his ex-wife has more money than he thought, let her. By the time she figures out how much more, it'll be too late for either of them to do anything about it. What are you planning to tell her? Everything she needs to know to make the right decision about her future with Noah. And what decision would that be? The decision to run as far and as fast as she can. The next evening, I arrived at Vita early and chose a table in the back corner where we could speak privately. I'd dressed carefully for the occasion, not the fragile cancer patient I'd been playing for, Noah, but the professional woman I actually was. Sharp blazer, minimal makeup, hair styled in a way that suggested competence and control. Bethany Rivers walked in exactly at 7, and I had to admit she was striking. Tall blonde, with the kind of polished beauty that comes from good genes and expensive maintenance. She was also nervous. I could see it in the way she scanned the room before spotting me. Dr. Hall. She sat across from me, placing her purse carefully on the table. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Miss Rivers. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Black. I signaled the barista, and we sat in silence until her coffee arrived. Then I leaned back in my chair and studied her openly. So, I said, you wanted to talk. I want to understand what you're doing to Noah. I'm not doing anything to Noah. I'm simply responding to his requests for meetings, during which you give him just enough hope to keep him interested, but not enough information to make a clear decision. What kind of information do you think he needs? He needs to know whether you want to reconcile or whether you're just enjoying watching him suffer. I took a sip of my coffee, considering my response. Miss Rivers, how long have you been sleeping with my husband? She stiffened. I'm not sure that's relevant. Humor me. 14 months. So you started your affair 2 months before I was diagnosed with cancer. Noah and I fell in love. It wasn't planned. It just happened. I see. And during those 14 months, what did Noah tell you about me? He said you'd grown apart, that the marriage had been dead for years. Did he mention that I was undergoing cancer treatment? He said you were sick, but what? But that the illness was just the final nail in the coffin of a relationship that was already over. I nodded slowly. And you believed him? Yes, Miss Rivers. Noah called me damaged goods when he filed for divorce. He told his friends that my cancer diagnosis was actually a relief because it gave him grounds for divorce without looking like the villain. Does that sound like a man whose marriage was already over? Or does it sound like a man looking for an excuse to abandon his sick wife? Bethany's face had gone pale. He didn't. He wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Lie to his mistress about his motivations? Use my illness as justification for his infidelity? You're trying to manipulate me, Miss Rivers. I don't need to manipulate you. The truth is sufficient. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings Sage had captured. Noah's voice, clear and unmistakable, telling Bethany that he couldn't be married to damaged goods. Bethany listened in silence, her coffee growing cold in her hands. He loves me, she said when the recording ended, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm sure he does. Just like he loved me, until I became inconvenient. This is different, is it? Tell me, Miss Rivers. What happens when you get sick? What happens when you're no longer the young, healthy woman who makes him feel powerful and desirable? What happens when you need him to be there for you instead of the other way around? We're not. You're not what? Human? Mortal? Subject to the same vulnerabilities that make all relationships challenging? I leaned forward, my voice gentle but implacable. Miss Rivers, I'm going to tell you something that could change your life, but only if you're smart enough to listen. What? Noah didn't leave me because our marriage was over. He left me because I got sick, and he's the kind of man who sees illness as weakness rather than an opportunity to show strength. The same man who abandoned his wife during cancer treatment will abandon his girlfriend the moment she becomes anything other than an asset to his image. You don't know him like I do. I was married to him for 6 years. I know exactly who he is. Bethany was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup as if it might contain answers. What do you want from me? She asked finally. I want you to make an informed decision about your future. Noah is planning to withdraw the divorce papers because he thinks I inherited money, not because he loves me, not because he's realized the error of his ways, but because he thinks there's financial advantage to reconciling. How much money? Enough to make him regret his decision to leave. And will you take him back? Miss Rivers, I wouldn't take Noah back if he came crawling on his hands and knees with a notarized apology and a cure for cancer. Then why are you meeting with him? Because I want him to understand the full scope of his mistake before I close that door permanently. You're playing with him. Yes, I am. Just like he played with me when he promised to love me in sickness and in health, then abandoned me the moment I needed him most. Bethany stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. Miss Rivers, one more thing. She turned back, her expression guarded. When Noah realizes that he can't have me back, he's going to return to you. But he's going to be angry, desperate, and looking for someone to blame for his mistakes. Be very careful about becoming that someone. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking about the conversation and what it might mean for Noah's state of mind. I'd given Bethany enough information to destroy her trust in Noah, but not enough to make her understand the true magnitude of what was at stake. By tomorrow, she'd be questioning everything Noah had told her about our marriage, about his motivations, about his capacity for loyalty. And Noah, faced with the collapse of his relationship with Bethany, would be more desperate than ever to reconcile with me, which was exactly where I wanted him. Desperate, off balance, and completely unprepared for what was coming next. The idea came to me during my final chemotherapy treatment, as I sat in the infusion chair watching the last of the drugs flow into my bloodstream. Riley was beside me, as always, making terrible jokes about hospital food and regaling me with stories from there. That made my own troubles seem manageable. So the guy comes in with a fishing lure embedded in his forehead, she was saying, and when I ask him how it happened, he says, well, Doc, it's a funny story, but I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about timing, about perception, about the careful orchestration of events that would give me maximum impact. When I finally revealed the truth to Noah, Riley, I interrupted. What would happen if someone thought I was dying? She stopped mid-sentence, her expression shifting from humor to concern. What do you mean? I mean, what if Noah believed that my treatment wasn't working? That I was getting sicker instead of better? Amira, your treatment is working. Your latest scans show significant improvement, and Dr. Morrison says I know. What? The scans show. But what if Noah didn't know that? What if he thought the inheritance he's so desperate to claim was about to slip through his fingers forever? Riley stared at me for a long moment. You're planning something diabolical, aren't you? I'm planning something final. The plan took 2 weeks to orchestrate, and it required the cooperation of several people who thought I was either brilliant or completely insane. Dr. Morrison agreed to help after I explained the situation, though he insisted on keeping the deception within ethical bounds. Margaret flew in from Montana with legal documents that would serve as props. Tessa prepared a series of carefully crafted legal instruments that would appear to give Noah exactly what he wanted while actually giving him nothing at all. And Sage, my brilliant niece, created a digital trail that would make Noah believe I was planning something he couldn't afford to miss. The first step was a carefully staged collapse at the cancer center. Riley, with her years of emergency medicine experience, helped me fake a seizure that looked dramatic but was completely harmless. Within hours, rumors were circulating through Noah's professional network that his ex-wife had taken a turn for the worse. The second step was a leaked phone call that Sage made, sure Noah's private investigator would intercept. In it, I spoke with a fictional attorney about final arrangements and ensuring proper distribution of assets before it's too late. The third step was an invitation. Noah, I said when I called him that evening, my voice weak and breathy, I need to see you. There are things we need to discuss before it's too late. Amira, what's wrong? I heard about what happened at the hospital. I'm tired, Noah. So tired. The doctors say the treatment isn't working the way they hoped. What do you mean? I mean that I need to put my affairs in order. And there are things about us, about our marriage, that I need to resolve. What kind of things? The kind that are better discussed in person. Can you come to the estate tomorrow evening? There's something I need to give you. What estate? The house in Montana. My grandfather's house. I've been staying there, trying to find some peace. Amira, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Noah, I know about Bethany. I know about everything. But I also know that you loved me once, and I loved you. Before this is over, I want to make sure you're taken care of. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. I'll be there, he said finally. Bring Bethany. What? Bring her, Noah. She's part of your life now, and she should hear what I have to say. After I hung up, I called Margaret. Is everything ready? The cameras are installed, the documents are prepared, and the staff has been briefed. Are you sure about this, Dr. Hall? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The Blackthorn estate at sunset was spectacular, the golden light painting the mountains in shades of amber and rose. I'd positioned myself in the main sitting room, wearing a simple white dress that made me look ethereal and fragile. Beside me, on the coffee table were several leather folders containing the documents Tessa had prepared. Noah and Bethany arrived exactly at 7, their tension visible from across the room. Noah looked haggard, as if he hadn't slept in days. Bethany looked suspicious, her eyes darting around the opulent room as if she were calculating its value. Amira, Noah said, approaching me carefully, you look peaceful. I smiled weakly. That's what everyone says when someone is dying gracefully. You're not dying. We're all dying, Noah. Some of us just have a better sense of the timeline. I gestured for them to sit across from me. Thank you both for coming. I know this is awkward, but there are things that need to be said. Amira, Bethany began, but I held up a hand to stop her. Please, let me finish before I lose my courage. I picked up the first folder and held it out to Noah. This is a legal document that dissolves all claims between us related to the divorce proceedings. If you sign it, it means you're giving up any right to challenge the division of assets we agreed to. Why would I sign that? Because of what's in the second folder. I handed him a thicker folder, watching his face as he opened it and scanned the contents. This is, he started, then stopped, his face going pale, a revised will. In the event of my death, everything I inherited from my grandfather goes to you. The estate, the investments, all of it. How much are we talking about? Bethany asked, leaning forward. I looked at her with what I hoped appeared to be genuine sadness. Enough to ensure that Noah never has to worry about money again. But if you're not dying, Noah began. The doctors are recommending palliative care. I lied smoothly. The cancer has spread faster than they expected. I have maybe 3 months if I'm lucky. The room fell silent except for the soft crackling of the fire in the massive stone fireplace. Amira, I'm so sorry, Noah said, and for a moment, his emotion seemed genuine. I know you are, and I want you to know that I forgive you for everything. The affair, the divorce, the things you said about me. I understand now that you were scared, and fear makes people do terrible things. You don't have to do this, he said, gesturing at the documents. Yes, I do. Because despite everything that's happened between us, I want you to be happy. Both of you. I turned to Bethany, who was staring at the will with undisguised fascination. Miss Rivers, I hope you'll take care of him. He's going to need someone strong beside him when this is over. Of course, she stammered. There's just one condition, I continued, pulling out a final document. I need you both to sign a confidentiality agreement. Nothing about this inheritance can become public until after my death. The family lawyers insist on privacy. Noah reached for the document eagerly, but I pulled it back. There's something else you should know first. Something I should have told you years ago. What? I never stopped loving you, Noah. Even after everything, even knowing about Bethany, part of me still loves the man I married. The words hung in the air like a benediction, and I watched as Noah's face crumpled with what looked like genuine grief. Amira, it's okay. I just needed you to know. He signed the documents without reading them carefully, his hands shaking as he wrote his name. Bethany signed as a witness, her eyes never leaving the will that promised to make them wealthy. After they left, I sat in the gathering darkness and listened to the audio playback from the hidden microphones Sage had installed throughout the room. Did you see how much money we're talking about? Bethany's voice was clear and excited. She's dying, Bethany. The woman I was married to for 6 years is dying. I know, and that's terrible. But Noah, this changes everything. We won't have to worry about money for the rest of our lives. It feels wrong, profiting from her death. She wants you to have it. She said so herself. Did you hear what she said about still loving me? Noah, don't do this to yourself. She's trying to ease her own guilt by making you feel better about the divorce. What if she's right though? What if I made a mistake? You didn't make a mistake. You fell in love with me, and that's not something you should feel guilty about. But she's dying alone, Bethany. While we're planning our future, she's dying alone. She chose to be alone when she refused to take you back. I stopped the playback and smiled to myself. Perfect. Noah was consumed with guilt and Bethany was consumed with greed. By the time they discovered the truth, it would be too late for either of them to recover. I called Tessa to confirm that everything was in place for the final phase. The documents they signed are legally binding, she assured me. The confidentiality agreement alone is enough to destroy them both if they violate it. And the will they think they saw? It's a beautiful piece of fiction that will evaporate the moment anyone tries to probate it. And the real will? Safe in my office, leaving everything to the charitable foundation we established. Noah will never see a penny of your grandfather's money. How long do we wait? Not long. I've scheduled a press conference for next week to announce your recovery and your new role as CEO of Blackthorn Health Sciences. By the time Noah realizes he's been played, the whole world will know who you really are. After I hung up, I walked out onto the estate's main balcony and looked up at the Montana sky, brilliant with stars that were invisible in Seattle's light pollution. Tomorrow, I would return to the city and begin the final phase of my transformation. Noah thought he was inheriting a fortune from his dying ex-wife. Instead, he was about to discover that the woman he'd called damaged goods was one of the most powerful people in the healthcare industry. The woman he'd abandoned was about to rise from the ashes of their marriage like a phoenix, and he was going to have a front row seat to watch her ascension. The charity gala was Seattle's premier medical fundraising event, held annually at the Four Seasons within guest lists that read like a who's who of the Pacific Northwest elite. This year's theme was Innovations in Cancer Care, which made it the perfect venue for what I had planned. Noah would be there. He attended every year as part of his company's corporate sponsorship package. Bethany would be there too, having convinced him that they should make their first public appearance as a couple at such a prestigious event. They had no idea that this year's keynote speaker would be announcing something that would change their lives forever. I'd spent the morning at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, getting my final scans and receiving the official word I'd been waiting for: complete remission. The cancer that had nearly destroyed my marriage had been defeated, just as I was about to defeat the man who'd abandoned me when I needed him most. Dr. Hall, Dr. Morrison said, shaking my hand warmly, I have to say, you're one of the most remarkable patients I've ever treated, not just because of your medical recovery, but because of the grace with which you've handled everything. If only he knew about the trap I'd been setting for the past 6 months. I arrived at the Four Seasons early, needing time to prepare both mentally and physically for what was about to happen. The ballroom was elegant in black and gold, with round tables surrounding a stage where I would soon reveal the truth to an audience of 800 people. Riley met me in the green suite, her usually relaxed demeanor replaced by nervous energy. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, helping me into the midnight blue gown I'd chosen for the occasion. "Once you do this, there's no going back." "I don't want to go back. Noah's going to be destroyed." Noah destroyed himself when he called me damaged goods and planned his future with another woman while I was fighting for my life. Tessa arrived with Margaret and Sage, who'd flown in specially for the occasion. My niece was practically vibrating with excitement. "The live stream is set up," Sage reported. "Everything Noah and Bethany say tonight will be recorded and broadcast to a private audience of about 50 people, including several journalists who've been very interested in this story." "What story?" I asked. "The story of how the heir to the Blackthorn fortune faked her own death to test her husband's loyalty," Tessa said with a smile. "It's going to make headlines." At 7:30, I took my place at the head table, directly facing the audience. From my seat, I could see Noah and Bethany at table 12, both dressed elegantly and looking like the perfect power couple. Noah kept checking his phone, probably monitoring my supposed decline, while Bethany worked the room with the confidence of someone who believed her financial future was secure. The irony was perfect. At 8 o'clock, the evening's host, Dr. Sarah Chen from the University of Washington Medical School, took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this year's Innovations in Cancer Care Gala. Tonight, we're here to celebrate the remarkable advances being made in cancer treatment and to honor those who've dedicated their lives to fighting this disease." She paused, scanning the audience. "But before we begin with our planned program, I have a special announcement. We're privileged to have with us tonight someone whose story embodies both the challenge of cancer and the triumph of the human spirit. Please welcome Dr. Amira Hall." The applause was polite but confused. Most of the audience didn't know who I was. But I could see Noah's face from across the room, his expression shifting from puzzlement to concern as I walked to the podium. "Thank you, Dr. Chen." "Ladies and gentlemen, 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 2 ovarian cancer. It was terrifying, overwhelming, and life-changing in ways I never could have imagined." I paused, letting my words sink in. But cancer wasn't the most devastating thing that happened to me. The most devastating thing was discovering that the man I'd been married to for 6 years, the man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, saw my illness not as a challenge we would face together, but as an opportunity to escape from a marriage he'd grown tired of. A murmur went through the audience. In the back of the room, I could see reporters taking notes. 2 weeks after my diagnosis, my husband filed for divorce. He told his friends that I was damaged goods, that I wasn't the woman he'd married, and that my cancer was actually a relief because it gave him grounds for divorce without making him look like the villain. The murmur grew louder. At table 12, Noah had gone completely pale. "But here's the thing about cancer," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "It doesn't just attack your body. It strips away everything false and superficial and leaves you with nothing but your essential self." And when everything false was burned away, what I found wasn't a victim. What I found was a fighter. I clicked a remote, and the large screen behind me lit up with a photograph of Lawrence Blackthorn. 6 months ago, I learned that my estranged grandfather had died and left me his life's work, Blackthorn Health Sciences, one of the largest medical technology companies in the world. The room erupted. Everyone knew Blackthorn Health Sciences. Their equipment was in every major hospital. Their research had saved countless lives, and their annual revenue was in the billions. I am now the controlling shareholder of a company worth approximately $15 billion, with assets that include research facilities on 3 continents and a pipeline of innovations that will change the future of cancer treatment. I paused again, letting the magnitude of the announcement sink in. But tonight isn't just about announcing my new role. Tonight is about truth and justice, and the consequences of abandoning the people who love you when they need you most. I clicked the remote again, and the screen filled with a photograph of Noah and Bethany at a restaurant, clearly taken during one of their dates while I was still married to him. The man who called me damaged goods has spent the past month desperately trying to reconcile with me, convinced that I'd inherited a modest sum from my grandfather. He hired private investigators, offered to increase my spousal support, and even suggested we withdraw our divorce papers. Another click, an audio began playing through the sound system. Noah's voice, clear and unmistakable, telling Bethany that he couldn't be married to damaged goods. This is the man who sat beside my hospital bed during my first chemotherapy treatment, I said as the audio played. Oh wait, he didn't. He was closing a real estate deal that day. The room was completely silent now, 800 people hanging on every word. 3 days ago, believing that I was dying, my ex-husband signed documents that he thought would make him the heir to my estate. He brought his girlfriend with him to witness his signature, and afterward, they discussed how my death would solve all their financial problems. I clicked the remote one final time, and the audio from the estate played through the speakers. Bethany's excited voice filled the ballroom. Did you see how much money we're talking about? We won't have to worry about money for the rest of our lives. When the audio ended, I looked directly at table 12, where Noah sat frozen in his chair, and Bethany looked like she was about to be sick. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something. I'm not sharing this story to humiliate anyone or to seek revenge. I'm sharing it because cancer taught me something important. We are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we respond to what happens to us. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in months. My ex-husband thought he was married to damaged goods. He was wrong. He was married to a woman who was about to become one of the most powerful people in the healthcare industry, and his betrayal set her free to claim that power. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous ovation that lasted several minutes. Through it all, I kept my eyes on Noah's table, watching as he and Bethany realized that their carefully planned future had just collapsed around them. When the applause finally died down, I smiled. The documents my ex-husband signed 3 days ago weren't actually legal instruments. They were props in an elaborate performance designed to show him exactly what he'd thrown away. The confidentiality agreement he signed, however, was completely real. Any attempt to profit from or publicize information about my inheritance will result in immediate legal action. I paused one final time. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful that your enemies become irrelevant. Tonight, I'm not just a cancer survivor. I'm a woman who's taken control of her own story, and I'm going to use that control to save lives. As I left the stage, I could see Noah pushing through the crowd, trying to reach me. But hotel security, carefully briefed in advance, intercepted him before he could get close. I spent the rest of the evening accepting congratulations, discussing my plans for Blackthorn Health Sciences, and watching from the corner of my eye as Noah and Bethany had what appeared to be a vicious argument before leaving separately. Riley found me on the hotel's terrace at midnight, looking out over Elliott Bay. How does it feel? She asked. Like the beginning of something extraordinary. And Noah? Noah is about to discover that karma is a bitch, and her name is Dr. Amira Hall. The next morning brought a flood of media attention that changed my life forever. The story of the cancer patient who inherited a fortune and used it to expose her cheating husband was international news within hours. But more importantly, it brought me something I'd never expected: peace. The woman Noah had called damaged goods was gone, replaced by someone stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. And she was just getting started. The headlines in the Seattle Times the next morning said it all. Cancer survivor inherits billions, exposes cheating ex-husband at charity gala. By noon, the story had gone viral across social media platforms, with hashtag damaged goods trending worldwide as people shared their own stories of betrayal and resilience. I was in my Capitol Hill apartment, watching the coverage on the morning news, when Tessa called. Noah's lawyer wants to meet, she said without preamble. About what? Damage control. Apparently, Noah's real estate firm received over 300 calls yesterday from clients wanting to terminate their contracts. His professional reputation is in freefall. I sipped my coffee, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. What's he offering? A public apology in exchange for you releasing a statement saying that your marriage simply grew apart and that there were no hard feelings? Absolutely not. That's what I told them. But Amira, you should know Noah's desperate. When desperate men have nothing left to lose, they can become dangerous. Before I could respond, my building's concierge called. Dr. Hall, there's a gentleman here who says he needs to speak with you urgently. A Mr. Noah Hall. Don't let him up, I said immediately. If he becomes aggressive, call security. Within 10 minutes, my phone was buzzing with calls from Noah's number. I let them all go to voicemail, then listened to the messages with growing concern. Amira, please, I need to explain. You don't understand what you've done. Call me back. I know you're screening my calls. We need to talk about this before it gets worse. God damn it, Amira, answer your phone. You can't just destroy someone's life and then disappear. The final message was different, quieter, more dangerous. You think you've won, but this isn't over. You've made a powerful enemy, and I promise you'll regret what you've done to me. I forwarded the messages to Tessa immediately, then called Margaret in Montana. I need the security team activated, I said. Already done. There are 2 agents stationed outside your building, and we've arranged for a security detail to accompany you to any public appearances. Is this really necessary? Dr. Hall, you've just humiliated a narcissistic man in front of the entire world. In his mind, you've destroyed his life, and he's looking for someone to blame. Until he accepts responsibility for his own actions, you're a target. The rest of the week brought a steady stream of interview requests, business opportunities, and congratulations from colleagues I hadn't spoken to in years. But it also brought an unwelcome visitor. I was leaving Fred Hutchinson after a follow-up appointment when Bethany Rivers approached me in the parking garage. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, hair disheveled, her usual polished appearance replaced by something that bordered on desperation. Dr. Hall, she said, stepping out from behind a concrete pillar. We need to talk. My security detail immediately moved closer, but I held up a hand to stop them. Miss Rivers, you look unwell. Noah left me, she said, her voice hollow. He said it was my fault, that I pushed him to pursue the inheritance, that if I hadn't been so greedy, none of this would have happened. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Because you orchestrated all of this. You played us both like puppets. I studied her face, looking for signs of genuine remorse or continued threat. What I saw was a broken woman who'd finally understood the cost of her choices. Miss Rivers, Noah made his decisions long before I came back into his life. He chose to cheat on his sick wife. He chose to call me damaged goods. He chose to abandon our marriage for financial gain. I simply gave him enough rope to hang himself. But you lied to us. You made us think you were dying. No, I made Noah think I was dying because I knew that was the only thing that would bring out his true character. A decent man would have felt genuine grief and wanted to make amends. Noah saw an opportunity for profit. Bethany's shoulders sagged. He destroyed me too. Did you know that? My job, my reputation, my future all gone because I was stupid enough to believe a man who told me his wife meant nothing to him. Miss Rivers, I take no pleasure in your suffering, but you made your choices with full knowledge that Noah was a married man fighting cancer. You participated in destroying my marriage, and now you're experiencing the consequences of that participation. So what happens now? You ride off into the sunset with your billions while the rest of us pick up the pieces? I considered the question. Seriously, Bethany Rivers had made terrible choices, but she was also a victim of Noah's manipulation. Young, ambitious, and blinded by what she thought was love, she'd allowed herself to become complicit in something ugly. Miss Rivers, Noah will move on to his next victim. Eventually, he'll find another woman to charm and manipulate, and when she becomes inconvenient, he'll discard her just like he discarded me and you. The question is whether you'll learn from this experience or repeat it. What's that supposed to mean? It means that you have a choice. You can spend the rest of your life bitter about what happened, or you can use this experience to become someone stronger and smarter. Someone who recognizes manipulative men before they destroy her life. After she left, I sat in my car for a long time, thinking about second chances and the different ways people respond to catastrophe. Bethany Rivers might survive this and become a better person, or she might become another casualty of Noah's narcissistic cruelty. Either way, it was no longer my problem. The following Monday, I walked into the Blackthorn Health Sciences headquarters in downtown Seattle for the first time as its official CEO. The building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel, with the company logo prominently displayed above the entrance. Margaret met me in the lobby, accompanied by Dr. Sarah Chen, whom I'd recruited from the University of Washington to serve as Chief Research Officer. Ready for this? Margaret asked. As we rode the elevator to the executive floor, I've been ready for this my entire career. I just didn't know it. The executive conference room was filled with department heads, senior researchers, and key administrative staff, about 30 people who would help me shape the future of healthcare innovation. As I looked around the table, I saw the faces of brilliant minds who dedicated their lives to saving others. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. 6 months ago, I was an emergency room physician fighting cancer and dealing with a collapsing marriage. Today, I'm the CEO of one of the world's most innovative healthcare companies. The journey between those 2 points has taught me something important. We are not defined by what happens to us, but by what we choose to do with what happens to us. I clicked a remote, and the wall screen displayed a comprehensive overview of our current research projects. Blackthorn Health Sciences has always been at the forefront of medical innovation, but I believe we can do more. We can be the company that proves you don't have to choose between doing good and doing well. I outlined my vision: expanded cancer research programs, aggressive development of treatments for rare diseases, and new initiatives focused on making healthcare accessible to underserved populations. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Dr. Hall, asked Dr. Michael Torres, our head of oncology research, what about the board members who wanted to sell to PharmaCorp? How do we handle their continued resistance? Dr. Torres, people who are primarily motivated by short-term profit don't belong in a company dedicated to long-term innovation. I'll be having individual conversations with each board member over the next 2 weeks. Those who share our vision are welcome to stay. Those who don't are welcome to sell their shares back to the company at fair market value. After the meeting, I stood in my grandfather's office, now my office, looking out at the Seattle skyline. The view encompassed the waterfront where Noah and I had once lived, the hospital where I'd received my cancer treatment, and the neighborhoods where I'd built my new life. My phone rang. Riley's name appeared on the screen. So, she said, how does it feel to be a healthcare mogul? Like coming home? Good. Because I have news from the Seattle General Grapevine. What kind of news? The kind where your ex-husband showed up drunk at the Four Seasons yesterday, demanding to speak with the event coordinator about that bitch who ruined his life. I sighed. Security? Security was called. Noah was escorted out, and there's now a restraining order being processed. But Amira, the man is spiraling. Word is that his real estate license is under review, his partnership is being dissolved, and he's been staying in a motel since Bethany kicked him out. I should feel sorry for him. Should you? Because I don't think you do, and I don't think you should. She was right. I didn't feel sorry for Noah. I felt nothing for him at all, not love, not hate, not even satisfaction at his downfall. He'd become irrelevant to my life, a cautionary tale about the consequences of choosing greed over love. Riley, do you think I'm a bad person for not feeling sorry for him? I think you're a woman who's learned to protect her energy for things that matter. Noah doesn't matter anymore. No, I agreed. He doesn't. That evening, I drove to my grandfather's estate in the mountains, needing space and silence to process everything that had happened. The house felt different now, not like a stranger's home, but like a place where I belonged. I was sitting on the main terrace, watching the sunset paint the mountains in brilliant oranges and purples, when my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Dr. Hall, this is Marcus Webb, the private investigator Noah Hall hired to research your background. I thought you should know that Mr. Hall has asked me to continue surveillance on you despite your public revelation. I'm declining his request and wanted to warn you that he may hire someone less scrupulous. Stay safe. I forwarded the message to my security team and made a mental note to have Tessa look into additional legal protections. But as I sat there in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the peace of the Montana wilderness, I realized that Noah's desperate attempts to hurt me were like shadows trying to damage the sun. He was a small, bitter man raging against forces he couldn't control or understand. I was Dr. Amira Hall, cancer survivor, billionaire, and CEO of a company that would change the world. Noah's opinion of me, his fury, his threats, his pathetic attempts at revenge meant nothing. I had work to do, lives to save, and a legacy to build. The woman he'd called damaged goods was dead. In her place stood someone infinitely more powerful, and she was just beginning to understand what she was capable of. 6 months later, I stood at the podium of the International Conference on Precision Oncology in Geneva, addressing an audience of 3,000 researchers, physicians, and healthcare innovators from around the world. Behind me, a massive screen displayed the results of our latest clinical trial, a breakthrough immunotherapy treatment that had achieved complete remission in 87% of patients with advanced ovarian cancer. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the auditorium, what you're seeing represents more than just medical advancement. It represents the power of turning personal pain into universal purpose. In the audience, I could see familiar faces: Dr. Morrison, who'd first delivered my cancer diagnosis and was now collaborating on our research protocols; Riley, who'd taken a position as Director of Patient Advocacy at our Seattle facility; and Sage, now a freshman at MIT but serving as our youngest ever consultant on artificial intelligence applications in diagnostics. 18 months ago, I was a cancer patient facing an uncertain future. Today, I'm proud to announce that the Hall Blackthorne Institute for Precision Oncology has received FDA approval for 3 revolutionary treatments that will change the landscape of cancer care forever. The applause was thunderous, but I was thinking about the letter that had arrived that morning from my grandfather's estate attorney, a final message from Lawrence that I was only now ready to receive. After the conference, I retreated to my hotel suite and opened the sealed envelope with hands that barely trembled. My dearest Amira, the letter began in Lawrence's familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, then you've not only survived your greatest challenge but transformed it into your greatest strength. I always knew you would. When I learned about your cancer diagnosis, I wanted to reach out immediately. But I also knew that what you needed wasn't my money or my influence. You needed to discover your own power. The inheritance was never about the money, though I hope you use it wisely. It was about giving you the tools to become who you were always meant to be. I followed your career from a distance, watching as you dedicated yourself to healing others, fighting for healthcare reform, and never compromising your integrity despite the pressures around you. I saw the woman you became despite my absence, not because of it. The greatest regret of my life was allowing pride to separate me from your mother, and through her, from you. I missed watching you grow up, missed celebrating your achievements, missed being the grandfather you deserved, but I never stopped believing in you. The company I built was successful, but it was always incomplete. It needed someone with your compassion, your vision, and your understanding of what healthcare means to the people who need it most. You've already begun to transform it into something greater than I ever imagined possible. But more than that, you've proven that strength isn't about avoiding pain, it's about transforming pain into purpose. You've shown that the most powerful response to betrayal isn't revenge, but becoming so successful that your betrayers become irrelevant. I am proud of you, granddaughter. Proud of the doctor you've become, proud of the leader you're becoming, and proud of the woman who turned her darkest moment into the foundation for changing the world. Use this gift not just to build a business empire, but to build a legacy of healing that will outlast us all. With love and infinite respect, Lawrence. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring my vision, as I finally understood the full scope of what my grandfather had given me. Not just money or power, but the chance to transform personal tragedy into global impact. My phone rang. Tessa's name appeared on the screen. Amira, I have news about Noah. What kind of news? The final kind. His real estate license has been permanently revoked. His partnership has been dissolved, and he's filed for bankruptcy. As of yesterday, he's officially moved back in with his mother in Spokane. I was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Noah Hall, the man who'd once controlled my life through manipulation and emotional abuse, had been reduced to a middle-aged failure living with his mother. How do I feel about that? I asked. How do you feel about it? Nothing. I feel absolutely nothing about Noah Hall. Good. That means you've won completely. After we hung up, I walked onto the hotel balcony and looked out at Lake Geneva, its surface, reflecting the lights of the city like scattered diamonds. Tomorrow, I would fly back to Seattle and continue building something extraordinary. The Hall Blackthorne Institute was already showing results that would save thousands of lives, and we were just getting started. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago, desperate to please, willing to compromise her dreams for a man who saw her as nothing more than an accessory to his ambitions. That woman had died in a cancer ward, her illusions burned away by betrayal and chemotherapy. In her place stood someone I was still getting to know, powerful, purposeful, and unafraid to use her influence to change the world. My phone buzzed with a text from Riley. Saw the news coverage from Geneva. You looked like a rock star up there. Also, did you see that Noah tried to contact Channel 7 News with some story about you faking your cancer diagnosis? They told him to get help. I smiled, thinking about how far Noah had fallen from the polished businessman who'd once called me damaged goods. His attempts to hurt me now were like a child throwing pebbles at a skyscraper, harmless and ultimately insignificant. I typed back, "No who?" Riley's response was immediate. "Exactly." The next morning, I flew back to Seattle and went directly to the Blackthorn building, where Margaret was waiting with the quarterly reports that showed our research divisions were exceeding every projection. But more importantly, she had patient letters, hundreds of them, from people whose lives had been saved or improved by our innovations. "Dr. Hall," she said, handing me a particularly thick folder. "These are from the families of patients in our pediatric cancer trials. I thought you should see them." I spent the next hour reading stories of children who were alive because of research funded by my grandfather's legacy and directed by my vision. Each letter was a reminder that the pain Noah had caused me had been transformed into hope for families facing their own dark moments. That evening, I drove to the small cemetery where my parents were buried, carrying flowers and the letter from my grandfather. I hadn't visited their graves since before my marriage to Noah, too busy accommodating his schedule and his preferences to honor my own family. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad," I said, kneeling beside their headstones. I know it's been too long, but I had to lose myself completely before I could find my way back to who I was supposed to be. I told them about the inheritance, about the company, about the research that would save lives. I told them about Noah's betrayal and my response to it. And I told them about the woman I'd become, someone I thought they would be proud of. As I stood to leave, I noticed another visitor across the cemetery, a woman in her 60s with silver hair, placing flowers on a grave near the back corner. Something about her seemed familiar, and as I walked closer, I realized why. "You must be Amira," she said, looking up from the headstone marked Lawrence Blackthorn. "And you are Catherine Morrison. I was your grandfather's companion for the last 15 years of his life." I stared at her, trying to process this revelation. "He never mentioned he was a private man, but he talked about you constantly, especially after your diagnosis. He wanted to help, but he also wanted you to be strong enough to help yourself. Why didn't he ever tell me about you?" "Because he was afraid you'd think he was trying to replace your grandmother, or that his feelings for me somehow diminished his love for your family." She smiled sadly. "Your grandfather was brilliant in business, but sometimes foolish about personal relationships. Are you the one who convinced him to leave me the company?" "Oh, no, dear. That decision was made years ago. I'm the one who convinced him to write you that final letter. He wanted you to understand that his faith in you wasn't based on blood or obligation, it was based on who you are as a person." We talked for another hour, and I learned things about my grandfather that transformed my understanding of him. He'd been lonely after my grandmother's death, guilty about the estrangement from our family, and deeply proud of my achievements despite never expressing it directly. "He would be so proud of what you've accomplished," Catherine said as we prepared to leave. "Not just the business success, but the way you've handled yourself through everything, even the way I dealt with Noah, especially that. Lawrence always said that the measure of a person isn't how they handle success, but how they respond to betrayal. You turned your betrayal into purpose, and that's exactly what he would have done." As I drove home through the Seattle evening, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. 2 years ago, I'd been Dr. Amira Hall, emergency physician, devoted wife, and cancer patient. Tonight, I was Dr. Amira Hall, CEO, billionaire, and architect of medical breakthroughs that would outlast me by generations. The woman Noah had called damaged goods was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the most powerful response to being broken wasn't seeking revenge, it was becoming unbreakable. I pulled into the parking garage of my new penthouse apartment, a space chosen for its views of both the sound and the mountains, representing all the worlds I now belong to. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to save lives and change the future of healthcare, but tonight, I simply stood on my balcony, looking out at the city where my old life had ended and my new life had begun, grateful for every betrayal that had led me to this moment. The last text of the evening came from Sage. "And Amira, saw your Geneva speech online. You looked like you belong on that stage. Also, did you know Uncle Noah is trying to start a YouTube channel called My Ex-Wife Stole My Life? It has 12 subscribers." I laughed out loud, the sound echoing across the empty terrace. Noah Hall, reduced to a failed YouTuber with 12 subscribers, desperately trying to reclaim relevance in a world that had moved on without him. The woman he'd abandoned was now one of the most powerful people in healthcare, saving lives and changing the world with resources he could never have imagined. And she was just getting started. The story that had begun with the words damaged goods was ending with something far more powerful: legacy rewritten, purpose discovered, and a future unlimited by the small minds of small men who couldn't recognize greatness when they were married to it. I was Dr. Amira Hall, and I was exactly who I was meant to be. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.